Warning, if you haven't watched the last episode of the Amazing Digital Circus, click off now because I'm going to be spoiling a lot of stuff from the finale, where you've been warned. So a couple weeks ago, I watched the Amazing Digital Circus in cinemas, and it was pretty good. So good that I decided I'm going to make a video to coincide with the release of the final episode that's going to get uploaded to YouTube pretty soon. So today, I am going to be ranking fictional characters based on whether or not they could survive in the circus. Now normally in the show, there's no way for characters to actually die because the physics of that world operate on cartoon logic. People can be shot, stabbed, and even skinned alive and they'll be fine. The only way for someone to actually die in the circus is for them to abstract, which is where the person's mind can't handle the stress and pressure of being trapped in the circus forever, to the point where their brain deteriorates and their in-game avatar becomes a giant glitch monster with no consciousness. With this in mind, this video will examine the character's emotional intelligence, mental health, and for fun I'll throw in how well these characters would interact with the already existing players in the circus. Now for this video I have a range of characters from different types of media, try and make the video interesting. So I decided to split it up into 3 tiers. Dies immediately, pretty self-explanatory. Jack's tier basically means that while they would survive for a while, due to stuff going on in their previous life, I think this will cause them to be more susceptible to being abstracted. And Kinger tier is they live forever. No matter what happens, no matter what Caine puts them through, they ain't going anywhere. So to start off, I have the protagonist from Sword Art Online, Kirito. Now, I picked Kirito because the premise of Sword Art Online and the Amazing Digital Circus have very similar premises, if not basically identical. People wear a headgear and they get trapped inside a video game. But unlike SAO, there's no way for people to escape the circus, which might greatly affect Kirito's ability to survive in this place. Because the whole reason Kirito survived as long as he did in SAO was because he knew that he could get out. He knew that if he just grinded hard enough, he could go back into the real world, and he had Asuna. Now there's also another interesting factor that comes in with Kirito. Kirito is Japanese, and the show takes place in America. And to my knowledge, I don't think Kirito knows how to speak English, so there's already a big language barrier between him and the rest of the cast, which will greatly affect his ability to communicate and make bonds with any of the people. In terms of Caine's adventures, Kirito is honestly going to be fine. He's been shown to be able to keep on to his sanity for 2 years during the game's lifespan. However, there is one thing that can't be overlooked. At the start of Sword Art Online, Kirito is only 14 years old, which would make him the youngest person to enter the circus. Considering most of the main cast are all in their mid-20s, with the exception of Ragatha and Kinger, who are a little bit older than the rest, which makes me question Kirito's maturity compared to the rest of the people in the circus. He did have a bit of problems with his family, so because of this, I gotta put him in Jack's tier. But I don't think he would die immediately. I think eventually he would abstract. Jesse Pinkman from Breaking Bad. Now Jesse is an interesting one, and surprisingly he's the most normal on this list. In some ways, he's very similar to Jax. If you've seen the last episode, it basically gets revealed that Jax was homeless and he didn't have a good relationship with his parents, which is very similar to Jesse, or he basically got disowned by his own family. But unlike Jax, Jesse would actually be chill with most of the people in the circus. I don't see him bullying people like Gango or Agatha like Jax did. This is kind of tricky for me, cause depending on where we take Jesse, like if we take season 3 Jesse, or like whatever season where he killed Gale Bedecker, he would probably abstract because of the guilt he would feel going into the circus. But if it's like El Camino Jesse, I think he would honestly go in Kinger tier. But if we're taking the series as a whole, from like season 1 to season 5, I think he would be somewhere in Jack's tier. But I think he would be above Kirito. The Joker. I'll be dead ass. I don't think he's surviving that long in the circus. He spent his whole life terrorizing Gotham and enjoys making people suffer. And he especially loves antagonizing Batman, pushing his limit to see if he can break his code. So what happens when you put a man like this in an environment where he can do none of those things listed above? He would most likely kill himself. I remember there was an episode of Justice League where Ace used her powers to show Joker's worst fear, and he immediately folded. And knowing Joker, it was probably something really mundane, like being a normal human, or living in a world where Batman doesn't exist. which is basically what Joker is if he ever made it to the circus. So you can imagine what Caine would do to this man if he ever ticked him off or if he made it to episode 8. And needless to say, he's not getting along with any of the main cast, so I think he would kinda just die. Bottom of the list. Next we got Son Gi-hun from Squid Game. Similar to Kirito, there's gonna be a massive language barrier between him and the rest of the cast in the circus. Gi-hun lives in Korea, and everyone else is American, so unless Caine has Google Translate, he's not going to be able to communicate effectively or make friends. And given how he's portrayed to be somewhat below average intelligence, there's no way he knows how to speak English beyond common phrases. In terms of character, he's actually pretty perfect for the circus. He's mentally unbreakable, and he always tries to keep morale in the group. He has probably watched over hundreds of people die in the most gruesome ways possible, and witnessed his friends pass away, and he still wanted to continue to participate in these games, in hopes of stopping others from dying in the same way. So he really wouldn't mind Caine's adventures. He's basically a Korean version of Ragatha, always trying to keep everyone in good spirit, because he genuinely cares about people. However, I do think he would eventually abstract due to the fact that he would still be thinking about the people he's leaving behind in the real world. His daughter, his friends, all the people that died during the Squid Game that he's trying to avenge. The revelation that he is forever trapped in the digital circus and that he's never coming out will eventually break him. I do think he would last longer than Joker though, so I think he would go into Jack's tier, just above Jesse and Kirito. Next we got L from Death Note. Unlike Kirito and Gi-hun, where the language barrier would kind of stop them from interacting with some of the people in the cast, L wouldn't really have this issue. L would definitely know how to speak English, considering he is from the UK and is a super genius, and has led multiple investigations worldwide. I think he would immediately figure out that his brain was scanned and copied in the circus, and that there was no way to escape. Now, I do think he'd be a bit of a loner in this place. Like, I don't really see L trying to socialize or mingle with any of the people in the circus. Like, can you imagine him trying to talk to people like Pomni or Zubo? Yeah, me neither. The only person I think he'd be interested in is Kinger, since he would be able to deduce that he was the one who created Caine and would want to know how he did it. Other than that, I don't really see L breaking. He's only been shown once to panic or like have a mental breakdown when Shinigami were confirmed to be real, and he got over that pretty quickly. So I kinda see the same thing happening here. Once he realizes that there is no escape from the circus, you would kinda just accept it. So I think we might actually have our first Kinger tier placement. Next we got Saul Goodman, another Breaking Bad character. I think out of everyone in the list, Saul is definitely the most sociable, so he probably wouldn't have a hard time making friends with any of the people in the circus. I think he'd be fine with Caine's adventures. He survived way worse in the show. You know, working with the cartel, working with Walter, so that really wouldn't faze him. I don't know if he would be Kinger tier though. He has way too many demons in his past that could potentially affect his psyche. His portrayal of his brother Chuck and him indirectly getting Howard killed would definitely weigh on him a bit. So I think Jack's tier would be pretty good. I think he would survive a bit longer than Jesse. Next we got the Homelander. Now, unlike the other characters in the list, where it's kind of debatable where they could go depending on their life history, I can definitively say Homelander immediately dies if he puts on that headset and gets transported into the circus. I can imagine him just trying to fly away or use any of his powers while inside, and upon realizing he has no power in the circus, he will just immediately break down and start crying. Especially because the last episode of The Boys finally shows us that Homelander without any of his powers is just a giant pussy. And due to his upbringing in Vought, being raised as a lab rat and not really having any concept of friends, family, or any societal norms, this would stunt his ability to be able to hold normal conversations or have basic empathy for people, which is why he is so weird in the show. And it goes without saying that his mental health is really cooked. Like, this guy has no chance of surviving in the circus without any of his powers, since he immediately started wailing as soon as anything hard came his way. So yeah, bottom of the list, dies immediately. Next we got Grunkle Stan from Gravity Falls. And I think we have another character joining the Kinger tier. Stan really wouldn't have any problems with Caine's adventures, considering he lived in Gravity Falls for over 30 years, and has probably seen stranger things than whatever Caine is cooking up. Also, he did kill Bill, who was like Caine, but 100 times worse. Stanley, despite all the things he's been through in life, getting kicked out of his family, being homeless, and being imprisoned in multiple states in America, he's strangely very optimistic. a desirable trait to have in the circus since it will help him navigate some of the crazy situations Caine might throw at him. And despite him being a grumpy old man, he's ultimately a softie at heart. However, I don't really see him being friends with a lot of the people in the circus. At best, he would tolerate the residents. Like for example, Zubo would kind of just remind him of Wendy and wouldn't have any problems with her, but everyone else like Pomni or Gangle would kind of just annoy him. I can't really picture Stan abstracting, since the whole situation of him being trapped in a virtual reality just feels like a normal episode of Gravity Falls. And in scenarios like that, characters usually turn out fine. So I'm fine with Stan going in the Kinger tier. So that's pretty much the list. If you think I got anything wrong, please leave it in the comments below and explain why. And with that, I'll see you again in the next one. Also, please subscribe to the channel, I'm trying to grow it.